we are here on the Phil Barrett Show. We have a new system in here. Jay was up all night installing this new system, and I think
Yeah.
I think you have it down pat now, don't
Not Pat,
you?
but
No?
it's down.
All right. Well, we're getting there. So welcome. We're here on the Phil Barrett Show at an undisclosed location in Saratoga County. Great to have you with us. Some of you might be joining us live. We're very happy to have you, whether live or via tape. But in any case, we're here today. We took a little break during the holidays. I just didn't want to bother too many people as far as being guests here on the holidays, and it's extremely busy time for me at work. Uh, as you get into mid-December through the first of the year, it's incredibly busy. We have our reorganizational resolutions for the county and the town. And at those reorganizational meetings, we make a lot of appointments for boards and committees for the coming year, set the schedule, and many other administrative things that need to be set for 2025. So those meetings did happen. At the County Board of Supervisors reorganizational meeting, I was elected to serve as chairman of the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors again in 2025.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate the support and confidence from my colleagues that they supported me for another year. So it's very proud to serve in that capacity. And really, the basics of the job are to execute the decisions made by the Board of Supervisors and help set the agenda for the coming year and be obviously a very important voice in the policies and procedures for the county on a day-to-day basis. So we have a great team at the county. They're incredibly not only helpful to us as a Board of Supervisors, but to the residents of Saratoga County. They do a terrific job each and every day, and just proud to lead the team again in 2025. As far as updates on the local level, not a lot to update you at this point. Some of my comments, my remarks at the reorganizational meeting at the county included looking ahead to 2025. We had a very aggressive agenda in 2024. We were able to get a lot done, and we have some larger initiatives that were started but not finished. They'll be finished in 2025 for the most part. But in all, there's a lot of decisions that will be made this year and initiatives completed that will set the course for Saratoga County for decades to come. And I can assure you that we take a lot of research, analysis, careful decision making, always keeping in mind that it's your money, not ours. I did remind everybody watching or at attendance at the meeting that Saratoga County is one of, I think, only 3 counties in New York State that remain at a 7% sales tax. What does that mean? Well, that means when you buy things in Saratoga County, you have the opportunity to save that percent. Also, we are the lowest taxed county in the 55 upstate counties in New York State. We normally say Saratoga County is the lowest tax county in the state, but somehow Suffolk County snuck in under us. I don't know how that happened. So I had to change that. I had to change it from all of New York State to the lowest of the 55 upstate counties. Still getting used to that. Well, we'll get them back. We did reduce the tax rate, county tax rate, by 5% this past for 2025. So it did go in the right direction. And we continue to be the lowest spending per capita in New York State. So I talk all the time about the importance of making the place in which you live as affordable as possible to live and conduct business. And I was glad to see that Governor Hochul was talking about that, the affordability agenda, I think she called it. We'll see what comes forward and with regard to initiatives from the governor's office and how they make their way through the state legislature. But a lot remains to be seen. I think in so many ways, New York State and a lot from our federal government, we become a subsidy nation, subsidy state. If they want to attract businesses to New York because of the cost of living and doing business here, a lot of times we're not competitive with other states. So we end up what? Using taxpayer money to subsidize those companies. She's talking about, the cost of living is high right now in New York State. So she's talking about sending checks to not everybody, but a large number of people in the state, a few $100 maybe. There's also an initiative where she's going to set up a $50 million program to give first-time home buyers help with their down payment because it's expensive to buy a house. Of course, it always has been, especially when you're starting out and buying that first house. So if we did more to make New York affordable for all New Yorkers, there wouldn't be the need for these subsidies. And of course, those subsidies come from the taxpayers. And more you see in our society and in New York State that everything is about a subsidy. So if we make things more affordable, if we make it more affordable for people to do business, run a business, live, that would be better for our economy and better for our families and businesses, as opposed to getting these one-shot subsidies here and there that if you get one, I guess, feels pretty good at the time. But boy, that wears off quick because things are still expensive and it's still very expensive to live here. So the affordability agenda will hopefully include regulation. Regulations are kind of what many people call them the silent driver of costs in New York State and in our nation in many respects. Regulation does as much to drive up the cost of living for people and businesses each day that high taxes do. Just not things you see in the headlines all the time. A lot of it's done administratively in different agencies in New York State and at the federal government. Things you don't even know about if you're not following closely, and most people don't. So it's very concerning, obviously, that these things are happening, and we need to change it quick. And it's being done federally, I hope, starting next week. I think the Trump administration certainly is well aware that regulations are stifling the economy, that are strangling businesses and families. And I think we'll see some sweeping changes and reductions in many regulations. So I'm hoping to see some action on the federal level here soon. I think we will. But when you have some of these states that are holding legislative sessions to, they calling it de-Trump their state, which California just did in the midst of all this devastation that they're experiencing.
Because that was so important.
Yeah, they had a session to de-Trump their state.
Trumpify.
Yeah, something like that. But is that really a good use of time and energy and money to do something like that? Why don't we let things play out and see what the policies and will bear in the near term and the long term for the economy in each and every state and our nation as a whole? That would seem to be a much better way to take a look at things. So we'll see. We'll see what comes down from New York State as far as some help with regulations, with taxes, with probably more subsidies for selected groups of individuals. But just keep in mind that that all comes from you as a taxpayer, whether you live in Clifton Park or Suffolk County or anywhere else. We also see a tremendous amount of subsidies in green energy. Every green energy project you see is subsidized by you with taxpayer dollars. So it's just another example of the incredibly high and extensive subsidies that are happening every day. So, as you are looking at the news, looking at what's going on, the trends, and what government's up to, again, a lot of these things are done administratively, without votes, without headlines, but they're sapping our pocketbooks each and every day, and also hurting businesses. But glad to have our sidekick here, Jay. Jay, how you doing? How were your holidays?
Holidays were great, actually.
Yeah?
Very good.
Good. Very. Yeah.
First time we get together this year.
Yeah. We took a little break, but we're back and ready for action. We have a great guest today.
Yeah, man.
Now, I know Christmas is your favorite time of year. You're an old softy when it comes to the holidays.
I love Christmas.
And I see you went to Canada for the holidays. You have your Canadians shirt, your Montreal Expos, and for you younger folks out there, you probably don't recognize that hat there, but
the old tricolor.
Yeah, Montreal Expos, which was
Gary Carter and Tim Raines. hey, my two mid-'80s guys.
Yeah, they had a couple of good teams, but overall they were pretty poor for a long time. But and they're now Jack said the Washington Senators. Yeah, Washington. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so
baseball team.
They're now the Washington Senators. Actually, did they win the World Series now?
Senators?
Yeah.
Montreal didn't win.
No.
Senators did.
Senators did. Yeah. Okay. All right. So the Washington Senators. But this is a hat that goes back many years, and it's good to see.
Yeah.
To see you're showing your
But I did
Canadian
go to Florida,
colors.
not to.
Oh, you went to Florida?
Yes.
Wow.
Miami, actually.
Wow.
Went and watched the Canadians.
What'd you do?
Watched the Montreal Canadiens play against the Florida Panthers.
Did you?
It was awesome.
Yeah?
Great arena.
Who
Weather
won?
was great. Montreal.
Oh, did they?
4-0.
Wow.
Good.
When I was growing up, the Canadians were awesome.
Awesome.
Guy Lafleur.
Guy Lafleur.
Who was the goalie they had?
Steve Penny.
No.
Oh,
Yeah. I remember Guy Lafleur. He's Rocket Richard.
Rocket. Well, you're going.
That's
back
going
in
way
the
back.
70s
Yeah,
now.
that's going way back. Well, I'm old. I can't tell you. But well, that's good. What else did you do down there?
Went to a really cool place called St. Augustine. Never been to St. Augustine. I highly recommend. Check that out. The oldest fortified city settled by the Spanish. The old world feel to it. Yeah, they had Festival of Lights there.
Nice. Congratulations. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
you had a good time.
What a great.
I know as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to get time away. So I'm glad you found the time to.
Thankfully, I was fortunate. I just closed the business.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Well, yeah, you don't want to get called. Plus, you give the rest of the guys a.
Yeah. Break from me.
Which one do you think they enjoyed the most?
Probably a break from me.
Yeah, I would say so. I didn't want to say it, so I'll let you say it. All right, so we, one of our new features is we're live now, which this is the first show. I didn't even know we were live till we got here. But and you can also comment. Is that true? That's dangerous.
That's you're supposed to be able to comment.
Yeah.
I have that 100%.
Oh, all right.
Catch that.
Well, I see Connors on there. And maybe Connors can try to comment, and then we'll see if it's working.
He scared me when he liked it, though, that little ding-a-ling that went through there.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
It sounded very Connor-ish. It was like a little tiny tinkle bell.
Is that going to show on the video, or do we just see that?
I don't know. See, this is all new. We are experiencing this as virgins.
This is what you call live entertainment, folks.
Yes.
You can't get better.
Look at him.
There's another.
George Castricani.
Yeah, I wonder if people can see that stupid thing bouncing up and down. But anyway, what we're looking at, if you can't see it, it shows that somebody's watching and liked it, and shows a little icon bouncing up and down. So, and there's a little jingle to it.
Yeah.
So I'll have to check that out.
It actually startled me when it first.
Yeah, me too. I was in the middle of a very, very serious monologue about subsidies, And I look up and I see Connor's name and some green Martian thing jumping around.
Well, thankfully it woke me up because you
Hey,
subsidies.
you're a small business. This is
Subsidies
it. This
kill
is
small
affecting
business.
you every day.
That's the problem is taxes.
Yeah.
It's all-
Well, regulations
yeah,
killing you
it's
every day.
terrible.
They have a whole slew of new wetland regulations that just went into play first of the year from DEC. And DEC is taking over a lot of the jurisdiction from the Army Corps of Engineers. If anybody has tried to do something with their property, you know, a lot of times you have to deal with both agencies.
Although that's probably not a bad thing. Now you're dealing with one agency as opposed to they have their own separate sets of rules. Not a bad. But still, it's
You say so.
grab for
You say so. All right. And so there's a whole slew of new wetland regulations. So if you have a parcel of land and you're looking to do something, be aware, new regulations coming down. So this is what I'm talking about. Regulations, subsidies. These will be two important topics this year as they continue to come down from New York State and beyond. But we have our first, we haven't been doing this too long, but we have our first return guest.
I was going to say return guest.
Which must give you the idea that the first appearance was incredibly successful, and it was.
It was great.
Yeah, I received a lot of feedback from folks after Jack O'Toole's first appearance on the Phil Barrett Show. And if you didn't see it, you can find it. Remember, subscribe. TGM Studios. Check it out on YouTube. And we're going to be on other platforms now, too,
yes,
right?
so now we're also streaming live on Guys on My Facebook page.
Oh, my God.
Setting up X.
Which?
That's part of this platform. Instagram and X.
Wow, all these changes.
Yeah.
Boy, you made good use of your time. You came back from Florida. You were ready to rock and roll, weren't you?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
TikTok?
TikTok as well.
TikTok, too?
As soon as O'Leary takes it up.
I think Trump, I think, likes TikTok.
Yeah, Frank McCourt and Kevin O'Leary have teamed up, right? And they've
$20
made
billion.
an offer.
$20 billion.
Mr. Wonderful was talking about.
That's a lot of money.
For something that generates no real assets, any tangible assets.
With revenues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Advertising.
Yeah. No, it's well, look what Elon paid for X. Twitter. What was that 40 something billion? 46?
How much is Meta worth? Facebook and
God.
Instagram.
As far as generating revenue, I
crazy.
think Meta's way above all of them.
It's about $1 billion.
I think the guy started in his.
Stole it from
Wow.
his room.
However that worked.
Allegedly.
The backstory, but to think that's how it originally started in somebody's dorm room, try to get dates.
Amazing
Look
how
at that.
went to the right and all of a sudden decide fact check anymore.
Yeah, it's amazing. Show me the money.
Well, I think we can say that Meta has decided to decrease regulation. So maybe they're going in the right direction.
I didn't know
I'll
that,
let you guess why. Right?
Zuckerberg is going to be at the inauguration.
Yeah. Oh, he is?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
$1 million contribution will do that.
Correct.
Wow.
So will
Oh,
Jeff,
yeah.
So will Jeff Bezos.
He gave $1 million to the party, right?
The inaugural fund.
Well, the inaugural party. I mean, it's gonna be a hell of a party. I think they raised over 200.
They also said this was going to be the first inauguration where foreign dignitaries
Yeah, he invited Xi from China, but I don't think he's.
sending a high level.
Oh, is he?
Not himself, but they
Very nice. Very nice.
They invited the Italian. Who wasn't invited?
Oh no.
Nope.
Interesting. Well, he might have been. We just don't know about it. But yeah, well, we're talking about the inaugural coming up here, January 20th. As we're talking about, there's various inaugural balls that happen that day. So
There's a lot of
it's,
pomp and circumstance.
oh
behind
my
that.
gosh, yeah.
Yes.
Between the drive and walk down the street, the swearing in, the inaugural balls, yeah, it's quite a day. And
You think he'll walk down the street?
I don't think
He
so.
did his first term. He was
yeah, he probably will.
well.
Yeah,
After Pennsylvania.
yeah.
Bet
For a
we should-
short
we should bet
distance.
on that.
He's not gonna
What's the over under?
not gonna start jogging or anything, but yeah, he'll probably get out and walk.
I'd be surprised. I think he'd have something like the Pope Mobile.
That
He
would
could.
be more.
It's just
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm more concerned with the results and the policies and deregulation that comes out of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of executive orders that first week and see how things
What
play
is it?
out.
He planned like 100 and some odd.
Yeah, they were talking about 100. Yeah.
Huge amount.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll see what happens. We'll be watching with everyone else.
With a bated breath.
Absolutely. I want to introduce our guest here again for those that didn't see the first time he was on, which was right after the election, presidential election,
Number 40.
November 14th.
Wow.
See that? I mean, is he a numbers guy or is he a numbers guy?
Either that, he just felt so special that he was
He
here,
is
you know?
a numbers guy. All right. So Jack O'Toole, he and his wife Maureen have been residents of Clifton Park since 1972. And that was before the Clifton
Malls.
Country Mall.
Any malls.
Yes.
Anything over there. Still had farms in it.
Well,
we
actually,
still do.
where the Bank of America is, there.
That was all farmland.
That was a Hoffman's.
Yeah, go
Garage.
kart.
Really?
Yeah. And when I moved
How
there,
great things used.
46A, where it meets 140,
Yeah.
was blacktop and pebbles. It was not paved road.
And now we have a roundabout.
Yeah.
And a really
so-
nice
And then we put in lights, and then we took out the lights, and the state put in a roundabout.
and a decent price chopper.
And
Really
a
nice
very nice price. There's
Yeah.
a long story to that price. When I write my book, which I'm going to start soon,
Memoirs by Phil Barrett.
that is going to be one of a million stories, both positive and negative, that are going to be in that book. So don't order yet. You can't order it yet.
I
I'll
can
let you
see it. It's going to be an Amazon bestseller.
It might be. You never know. So anyway,
man.
yeah, because the Clifton Country Mall, which is now the Clifton Park Center, opened in '76. So so Jack's been there before there was the mall, and then the Price Chopper Plaza and Hannaford Plaza, those opened up in the '80s. So you were there well before all that, but you retired in '24 after a 50-year career in the financial services industry with Merrill Lynch. During his business career, he assisted individuals and small business owners with financial planning, portfolio management, and asset allocation through risk profiling and investment policy and objective statements. He advised corporate clients, small to mid-sized companies with retirement planning and cash management. He attended Adelphi University. What's the mascot for Adelphi? Did it change?
Yeah.
Did it-
Like everything.
It became woke.
It's like the state going
Ah,
because of playing.
Not like Garnet Raiders or.
look,
Oh,
That's
okay.
Iona.
Okay. No, that's Union, isn't it? Union, Garnet Raiders,
what did they
What?
used to be?
Dutchman.
That was controversial.
Yes.
Oh.
DEI.
I guess because it said men in it. I don't know. Served on a number of boards of the
Dutch people.
Capital Region. Yeah, well, they could have changed it to that. One of the founders of the Capital Region Sports Foundation. He's been very active in the 80s and 90s in particular, and various organizations that support our community, including the Shen Schools. He's one of the original founders of the Shen Educational Foundation, which is still rolling today. They're active parishioners with St. Edward's, the Confessor Church, for more than 43 years. He enjoys traveling, golf, and promoting the youth of the Capital Region through sports. Welcome, Jack O'Toole.
Thank you.
Jack,
Thank
for
you. Belated Happy New Year to all.
Yes, Happy New Year to you. And thank you so much for taking time out to be here again. And like I said, I received great deal of feedback and actually a lot of questions from people that came out of our discussion. And as we stated, it was right after the election. And we had talked a lot about the Trump trade. Since Trump had won, what might happen now leading up to the inauguration. And now that we're right there at inauguration day, thought it would be great to have Jack back. And, if you follow the markets, stock market, if you follow financial news every day like I do and many others do, it changes every day. I mean, it's just something new every day, but it's important to stay in tune with it as you make your own personal decisions. Most Americans have some connection to the stock market, whether you have a 401k, maybe you have a brokerage account where you're trading stocks, your state pension, you're connected to the stock market. So most of us do have skin in the game when it comes to what the market does day to day. But even if you don't have any direct skin in the game in the ways that I just mentioned, it still does affect you because overall it affects our economy a great deal. And a lot of that comes down to confidence. I mean, our economy, our banking system, so much of our life and society comes down to confidence. And if somebody gets their 401k statement, they may not watch the markets every day, but they look at their 401k statement every month. And if it's down 15%, well, they're probably going to be a little less confident and maybe pull back on their spending a little bit. If it's up 15%, well, they probably feel a little better and maybe they spend a little more. So it's very important overall as you make your own financial decisions, as you might be thinking of starting a brokerage account and buying stock. That's a decision we all make personally, but that might be something you're interested in. And I did have a couple people that were thinking about that. So they're very glad we talked about that aspect of it. What's the first thing to do and how do you do it? So let's first talk about the stock market performance since the last show late in 24. We're not going to give stock picks. We're not going to get into that. Jack in his capacity can't do that, and I'm not about to do that for many reasons. But we did talk about a lot of areas of the stock market, and along with talking about those areas of the stock market, I also gave some stock symbols just so people could, if they were interested in any of that, could do their own research and research companies and decide if they want to invest in those companies. But the areas that we talked about as benefiting from the Trump trade certainly have. We've seen many segments of the market go up quite a bit. We talked about crypto and Bitcoin. We talked about some other burgeoning technologies that are coming to fruition with companies, many of them new companies that aren't making money currently, but that's all part of the process of growth. Yeah, it's very they're young in the cycle and losing money, but the technologies that they're working on are coming to fruition. And a lot of those areas are way up. So a lot of the areas we talked about are up considerably since our last show. We have seen some of those areas have a tough couple of weeks, but boy, the last couple of days they're really rolling high again, including today. So just want to talk about that a little bit, Jack. What have you seen since the last show in the stock market, and what areas look positive to you, and what concerns do you have?
Well, let's take the Dow. Dow's
Yeah.
down a little over 3% since station. There is a couple changes to the Dow, adding a couple of stocks, and one important change was Nvidia.
Yeah.
With the adding of Nvidia, it became a more volatile index.
Yep.
He's been down 2%. NASDAQ is the other areas accelerated back place. I call that idiot. The other thing to remember is all these indexes are weighted by the size of the company. The bigger they are, the more they add to upside or down.
Right.
The Super 7, Magnificent 7, been kind of flat to their.
Right.
Going forward, uh, what is it that's going to make markets move? It's going to be part of the AI trade. And I think maybe a little background on how do you come to that conclusion might help. Back to the late 80s, 90s, it was the beginning of the internet building out. You needed Dells to build infrastructure, if you
Computers.
will.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of got to the dot bubble in at around 2000, where we started moving to the software company. Software accelerated for their time now, and software has still in importance and high importance, along with technology that's coming about. So AI, in any way, shape, or form, is going to be important going forward as it moves probably towards the next. Be taking that software and move quantum computing.
Which
You
is
got-
the next,
Well, it's the next phase, but let's
Yeah.
be clear that that's probably at earliest, probably 10 years out before it becomes a major factor. The side of that, the first quantum computing company has been in the forefront of all of this. They're the ones have let everything. I mean, we get the Jeopardy. They're leading the way again and have been very quiet company.
Mm-hmm.
And a nice part about paid from them dividends.
Very
Well, you
stable.
wait, get paid on your capital. But there are other companies, Wave, Getty, a couple of them that have people just jumped in on them associated with prices. As soon as Nvidia's chairman said
Yeah.
there really wasn't happened there a while, came down. So, but again,
Oh,
if you
bad thing to say.
well, again, but that's the nature of the ballgame. So
Yeah.
this environment, a couple of things that I look back on, and that lead me to believe that we could be in for a volatile environment for a while now. Again, and in looking at this from past years, an awful lot of what happened in the remember when we get into no matter what happened, had extraordinarily high inflation. Spending went up. Had added two problems in it. And not unlike that, what's been now. Will President be able to create some of that? Some of his policies leading to some stand or don't know. What is he going to do?
Yeah.
How is these policies going to affect us? The unemployment rate it has been steady. The Fed only dropped interest rates in December, but if you go back and look at the reports that came out in September and you compare that to what's going on now, there's probably not a good reason for the Fed to lower rates any more than they're talking about. That
Still got to pull that money. Bring
and
down
that's
inflation,
exactly
yeah.
right. And so that that old C40 stock to bond report, it might be reversed now. It might be 40-60 because we approached again the 10-year rate at 5%. Treasury issue. Corporate bonds are reapproaching 7. Good
Interest rate
quality bonds. Right. So there could be a lot of volatility going forward, but we will be relying on those companies that and how you put to good use AI.
Yeah, and going back to what you were talking about, when people read the headlines of the financial news, the Dow was up or down, and the Nasdaq 100 was up or down. That's not always a good indication
No.
as to what's actually happening in the stock market, and that's why I like to talk about different sectors, because so many of these companies. I mean, we have multi-trillion-dollar companies, market cap now, and you have a few companies that, if they go up, they bring it all up, bring those indexes up. And if they go down, it brings the index down. And you might have sectors of the stock market that are doing very well. But when you see, oh, the Nasdaq 100 or the Dow or the S&P was down today, oh boy, that's not good. But really, there's a lot of opportunity. Now, I think you're right. I think we're going to see quite a bit of volatility. I think after the election, there was a sugar high on what is expected that Trump's going to do. As we get closer to Inauguration Day, I think there's some indecision. I think now reality hits and investors are taking a pause. We better wait and see what exactly is going to happen. I think there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, there is. I'd look at the if you follow the trending, you'd see that infrastructure, anything associated with infrastructure, seems to start. Or that bodes extremely well
Mm,
for the average American because more money spent on things that you.
hmm
The problem with that is doesn't it's not going to lower interest rates
Right.
because it's going to have people lack of people to service wages are going to pharmaceutical companies. And we tech in is a big broad terminology. I would be cautious about some of big name tech companies
Yeah.
because they've had such a big run. But
Right.
it's now the people who connect all.
Well, it's all about earnings.
It's
I
well,
mean, because a lot of
I-
them are very highly valued, and you can find that it's a pretty good indicator. When you bring up a stock, you can go to Yahoo Finance, you can go to Market Watch, there's a whole bunch of them, and you can put in the stock symbol and look up a stock, and there will be something called a price to earnings ratio in there. And what that gives you is uh, it's a way to give you the level at which the company is performing and how expensive or inexpensive a company might be to buy. Now, it doesn't tell you everything, but it is a quick indicator that you can find. And that price to earnings ratio is just that, it's the price of the stock versus the earnings. And right now, and it certainly, when stock market went up big right after the election, the overall value of companies, that price to earnings ratio, is became very rich, and it still is.
on the indexes, they're all very high.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
But-
overpriced.
but even for these companies that have done well in the stock market, overall, because you'll hear people talk about the overall level of price to earnings ratio or price of stocks is an average PE of X. And right now, historically, it's very high. The only way that we're going to see continued positive momentum in the stock market is if earnings can keep pace and exceed those very high price to earning
That's why I
ratios, right?
said the connector companies, those being connector companies, those companies that will allow other AI companies to talk with each other, take
Right.
care of their silos to make sure that they all function and work together. The other ones making them OSP. Those are the areas I think I'm looking at.
So you have the people that make the chips, NVIDIA's big name right now. They've been on an incredible hot streak with their new Blackwell chip. So that you have the people that make the chips. You have the people that help with the cooling of the process as they're being used, which like super microcomputer, which
I would.
which is which had a huge run up to over $1,000 a share or something at one point. But I think they did a 10-for-1 split or something.
They reversed 10-4.
Yeah, but they have some
They
accounting
bought back
issues.
their,
Huh?
they bought back
No,
theirs, right?
No,
They're
No, they have some accounting issues.
Yeah.
Their
it's
accounting company fired them, which is never a good sign. They did bring on a new accountant, BDO. So that's the new accountant, but they also have some other disclosures and paperwork that they have to submit to NASDAQ so they don't get delisted. So they have a number of issues. But that's just one example. I'm not saying buy them. That's just one example of that type of company. Then you have the quantum computing companies like Rigetti, RGTI, like BTQQF is another one where they're doing something different in that universe. Can you explain exactly what quantum computing is as it becomes part of our lexicon here?
sure.
I know I might have caught you off guard there with that question, but
It's science of quantum mechanics.
yeah,
Idea behind that, computers usually go quantum mechanics, simply put, care of its work. The idea behind the mechanical part of that, which will allow chips by a rate extremely complex.
it is.
But
It's tough to
but
explain.
and that's exactly why a company like an IBM, who has been years and has pushed out all the basics to these other, and they would push that their process it, what everything is disciplines. There's subsets. There's the physicists and quantum computing and mechanics that all come together. How somebody to accelerate their knowledge and their speed.
It's all about speed of information. Everything that's happening.
well, it's
right?
the speed of information, but it's allowing you to not pay attention to when I'm open to I'm closed.
Yeah.
It's allowing you to say, care what that is. We want to be able to use that we want to be able to use that space to go from point A to point B with anybody knowing it and accelerate that as you.
And all these stocks we're talking, these industries, the stocks themselves are very volatile. As Jack just mentioned, like an RGTI, BTQQF, they were up hundreds, maybe 1,000%. And then the NVIDIA CEO just had a speech that you just mentioned,
It was
and
about 2 weeks
he
ago.
said, "Oh, quantum computing's a ways off," and those stocks dropped in half
It's
the
not
next day.
well, he was saying it was going to be like 20 to 30 years off. I don't.
Yeah.
With the way things are going today, I would say you're probably somewhere between 10 and 15 years practically.
Yeah.
Practical use is not what you and I would do to Stewart's and get an ice cream. Practical use is what they can use in business type of thing.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's controlling quantum mechanics and the physicists that have to explain that and get that out of here on a piece of paper in a formula they can manufacture it.
Yeah, and that Rigetti stock that dropped more than half a couple of days. It's come back strong
Yeah.
the last couple of days. Same with BTQQF. Dropped way down, came back last couple of days, but still not where it was when that speech was made.
But one of the things that was interesting that they and the other quantum stocks have done is they've been focusing on subatomic particles, mechanical quantum physics part of it, because that's where all the speed happens. Not in, so if they're trying to figure out a way, how do we control that through hitting formulas to be able to put on a chip, and they can do it, but it heats up too quick.
Pretty amazing.
It's I don't know how people think of these things.
I know, and how they execute it.
Yeah.
I mean, coming up with an idea is one thing, but how do you put it into practice? And that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I say. There are companies, big name companies, that have been doing it for a while, but the small companies, if it's one of those things where you got grandchildren or young children, a couple of those companies pick them away, worry about it for fee,
Yeah, right.
then okay. But it's at this point in time, it's not a practical subset of anything. It's though.
The
But
other
it has to start somewhere.
Yeah, another thing we talked about on the last show was, burgeoning nuclear technology, and that seems to still be plodding along. Again, these are like OKLO. These are companies that are, they're not profitable, and they're burgeoning technologies. But it'll be interesting to see where they go and how they play into data centers, because data centers are such a big part of what's coming next. And you also have companies that provide HVAC and cooling, going back to cooling, because all of these processes create so much heat. And those companies like Vertiv or Comfort Systems or Modine,
That goes back to what I was saying.
they've been shooting up
It's the
too.
connector companies that put all them together
Right.
that are going to probably be the beneficiaries of the next 3 to 5 years.
So and I'm leading to a question are you talking about the companies in quantum computing directly, or more aligned to
No,
the data centers?
I'm talking more like an ANET. There's the companies allow the data centers.
Oh, okay.
They
All right.
allow them to.
So it is, but it does involve the data center.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
it's not only
yeah,
data centers,
yeah.
it's all, but it's those companies that connect all these entities, allows them to be able to talk with each other.
Right.
And
right.
that's the next big one, because every one of these companies has their idiosyncrasy. Somebody has to make that work together so we can all have the same kind of conversation. Those are the companies that I think will do extremely well over the next 5 years, because the need. We've grown some of these data. Well, again, take an Amazon.
Yeah.
Look at AWS, and then you go out and look at some of the other data. Microsoft. That's when Microsoft took over defense departments versus where Amazon had talked to each other. They didn't care. So they sued each other over right and how did this happen? How did this not happen? So somebody's got to be able to make those guys talk.
I see.
And there are companies out there that are doing that. Very successful. And their revenues are driving dramatically up.
ANET, that's a stock symbol? Or Oh yeah, no, yeah. No. Well, I just just companies in that space. These again, there's no stock picks here. Just talking about companies that are in the space of some of these burgeoning technologies that are quite interesting. Yes, sir.
You talk about that, watching it, geopolitical dynamics. I was listening to an earlier. The big things Canada, the colder climates help with the temperature controlling of the
They also have
cheaper energy too. But
yeah.
it's just amazing how they're all related. Geopolitics, all interconnected. And I think that's why good things all together, or they think it's going to happen.
Well, that's the interesting part about him throwing state. I obviously that's happen.
That's to get people to the table.
But an
That's
economic,
to get people to the table.
the economic tie-up though would be dramatic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be dramatic, and that benefits everybody.
Yeah.
Sure.
It would have a lot
Helps
of potential.
everybody's 401k.
Yeah. That's, one group that I wish would take, wish you took on vacation for about 6 months down to Florida is the Federal Reserve. I think they've been less than helpful
Yeah.
with some of their moves.
Not a good entity.
They did cut the Fed rate for the third straight time in December, which you did refer to, Jack. But what we've seen is interest rates have been climbing ever since, particularly the 10-year bond. And why should people care about that? Because not everybody out there is following these markets every day, but there's certain things to look for daily outside of the headlines that are important to see where the trends are going. And one of them is that 10-year. And why?
Well,
important?
let's kind of go back a little.
Yeah.
We're getting back to what bond markets used to be. 10-year Treasury 5%, time to sell your equity.
Right.
When it tra-
Mm-hmm.
So we have had. So the answer to your question is, we cut the Fed last year. Powell said we're going to 3.9%, and then we'd have a couple of cuts in 7, but that originally priced in employment data happened in December. The employment data stayed high. Data stayed working there. The answer to your question is 5% or roughly thereabouts 5%. Why that's
For the 10-year Treasury.
on a 10-year Treasury?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Why that becomes important is that's the basis that's used for pricing everything else.
Right.
The Fed takes care of it. Anything get beyond on the
Right.
basis. That's the not has to do what happens. Fed doesn't basis. So if interest rates are at 5%, your mortgage rate is priced off of that,
Right.
because there's a spread to the bank. Hold on. So you're probably not going to see mortgage rates come down below 7 points. As soon as interest rates started going, happen. Applications for housing market starting to come out of its slump. Full stop. Credit card rate of return that you do pay on those, but credit cards all based on your automobile loan, mortgages, carrying costs that all pay settles. Extremely important that is doing it. How much issuing debt? If you notice lately, as interest rates down again, but they've had a hard time selling to the time frame, because I is saying costs to make $1 more, X more. So there's a fight to be had there, and I doubt very seriously what inflation rate probably another.
Do you think there would be any more Fed cuts in 20? I mean, could we go the whole year without another Fed cut?
Theoretically, the answer to that is yes, but I
Yeah.
probably will be too.
You think so?
Will be
Yeah.
too. But if in the first 90 days, we'll tell exactly what's going to happen, because if they don't do targeted tariffs and they just go tariffs, those there won't be any cuts. There might even be a raise.
Yeah.
That would become more likely the tariffs go too high and just
And I think it confuses people when they see the headlines that the Federal Reserve cut rates, but you see interest rates going up. And that's why that 10-year treasury is very important to your everyday lives because, as Jack just mentioned, that everything you're doing, your mortgages, your car loans, credit cards, it's all based on that 10-year. And it's about 4.8 now, right?
482.
Yeah, 482 now. So it's been creeping up ever since the Fed cut their Fed rate back last December, and that is truly what now that Treasury, like other you have 2-year, 10-year, and uh, that is determined by trading
Yeah,
and
the
other factors.
institutions that are going to go out and buy that, the Fed will offer, well, it'll offer so much. This is the price of that. Or the institution come to them and say, we will buy at this range.
And this is when the government is selling those 10-year treasuries,
Treasuries.
right? So
Well,
they go out
any
on the
auction.
market.
Yeah, if anything in the auction market,
Yeah.
That's
So
what
they go out in the market and they say we want to sell
X amount of
10-year treasuries and we'd like to sell it at X.
X amount of dollars for this particular price,
And,
and the
these
auction market
institutions either run to that or
they'll-
they
or
decide
they'll-
not to buy, or they say, well, we're not going to buy at that price, we'll buy it at this.
combination of all.
Yeah.
But the latter and being more.
Yeah.
So you had Feds that some of their so with
Inflation.
sure, with Trump doing this as deportation, probably bolster your
Again,
Good.
I think pragmatic part of this is probably going to be at some point they're going to have to
diminishing return.
between who needs to be deported and why versus the green card issue. Why do we have people from different? You know, we meaning this country continues to decide further and further. There are other countries, India,
Yeah, they're all from the
so coming from that area, that's an important going in their education.
talk about like the HB1 visa
Yeah.
deal.
So if besides he's just going to export everybody, which is what he said, then bigger problem.
Mm.
So it has to be done with some thought.
Right.
You know, again, if you're not growing your population by more than 2.1 a year, there is a population a lot higher than that. Eagles
Through
those
yeah,
places,
through
right.
immigration. not
But if you
through-
look at
yeah.
what's going on in China now, they're well below, barely percent. Happened with negative, and
That's a
Japan.
global problem.
But it's a very big problem in Europe. It is not a problem. Not a problem. Becoming a problem in the East Africa, in particular, Africa sector of the world that is population. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that if we want to continue to be a nation, you have to do this judiciously. Don't make a decision. Doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, we will be in.
Yeah, and it's we have seen that. I know China is bumping up against a lot of issues economically,
have
and
a lot of
some of that
problems.
is due to demographics.
Mostly demographics.
Yeah, and a lot of that traces back to their one-child policy years ago, right?
It all traces back to that. And even after they lifted the ban, they had
Takes
ingrained.
time to.
Well, they ingrained generations,
Yeah.
and
That's
and
true.
and, and if they ingrained generations, and if female was born, it was no good. So they have more issues. Their real estate market is still killing them. The GDP comes out on Friday, and it'll be interesting what happens because it's been in decline now for still growing 3 to 5%. They're now having more and more problems, more so than you would lead to believe. This problem. Now, again, what's their alternative to that? Alternative is take everybody else down. How they do that through cyber attack.
Yeah, and other means.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but that's their big gun at this point. Somebody, if they get that under control, that it will be a less. But it's South America, Brazil, the is growing their population.
I think also one.
Hmm.
Yeah, because they just changed. They just
Yes.
changed people down.
Yeah.
Argentina and Chile have started to grow their populations again, but Brazil's economy is ratcheting up. China's made some pretty big inroads there. I'm sure Trump will put it coming.
Pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of issues that are being affected by them. Frankly, demographic. If you go back and starting with the baby boom, okay, baby boomers changed everything. Where we live, school, Pete.
Hey, Pete. Pete Bardunas. Hello, guys.
Right from where we live, everything we've done, stage in life, we're in the baby boom population. People, going to be a gap there. Why you see morphing
Identification.
does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all about the availability of workforce. Has a lot to do with that. So if you don't have a growing population, I mean, every year you have a segment of the population that drops out of the workforce for whatever reason. You need to fill those people that have dropped out of the workforce and have new people coming in to get the work done and to ensure a growing economy. And that's part of those demographics that China's having, the problems China's having. They're also having issues because of the way their educational system is set up. It's uh, so focused on repetition and not.
No independent think.
Yeah, right. There's no independent thinking. It's just repetition, and it's the same thing over and over again. And when these kids are getting out ready to work, they're not prepared. And I know
Well,
that's been a big factor in their economy as well.
they're prepared for factory
Yeah, they're just
Yeah.
when it comes to
cookie cutter work.
areas growing the economy, they're
Yeah.
just not prepared to be
They
out there in the work.
have a, and they have a, my opinion, they have a problem also. They've built all these cities that just lives in them,
Mm.
and they're already crumbling. So now they either do one of two things: you can spend internally, start rebuilding, crumble. They don't have the money to do other,
Right.
and that's a big issue.
So China has a lot of mounting problems. Every country has problems, but comparing the U.S. to any other area in the world, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else or have anybody else's problems.
You are far and away by any stretch, any measure, technologically. The problem we suffer is we we include every child patient,
Right.
but only the.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're right. Why would we want to trade
Well,
anything else?
I also think that when they
We're honest.
because if you look at if you were to
Yeah.
take our demographics, population, but they put us against these metrics are all yet they want
It dramatically.
very different.
Well, yeah, but they're really, really.
As of late. I mean, they have a huge immigration problem.
Yeah, but
And
their
problems.
population
Zero.
extent that it's
Yes.
negative.
That's why they were. Now they're having problems with that.
Another pressure on interest rates and inflation is economic growth.
Yep.
Under
all
certain
tied together.
right, under certain circumstances, and we've seen the jobs report that you mentioned, Jack, and the job reports. Yeah, on the surface it looks strong, and then when you look into the numbers, you see most of the growth coming from healthcare and government. That's not the kind of economic growth or job growth we want to see. There was actually, I think, a 13,000 decrease in manufacturing, which is very concerning. So,
It is, but the interesting part about that, if you actually go and look at the numbers from a manufacturing standpoint, we still manufacture about 45% plus of all our goods in this.
yeah.
Not the 55 to 60% it was 20 or 25. I understand that. But then again, government pushed everybody to go global.
So,
20 or
so
25%.
what if there are targeted tariffs? Can we turn that around to
Well,
getting back over
Well,
50%?
That's the
Absolutely.
hope. That's the
Yeah,
hope.
that absolutely could. You could drive it back dramatically back.
Right, right. And of course, the argument is, oh, well, that's going to drive up costs. That's going to drive up inflation. And maybe in the short term, that might be the case, but
Innovation will take care of that.
right,
Yeah, I
right.
agree with
It
that.
always
Right.
does.
Yes, correct.
Anybody who argues
And that's why I like talking about these other segments of the stock market and the economy that we started talking about, because that's where the innovation's happening. That's where the next phases of growth are going to come from. And it's going to increase productivity immensely. And with the increase in productivity, you should have falling prices.
I would like at some point in time be able to get over kids are out there talking. They wanted next looking for capital, looking to be able to spend and build tech part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there's opportunity. Again, they're going to produce those 5 to jobs and we want.
Yeah. And then they find something that nobody else has found, and that's the person that goes from the 25 person company to Jensen Huang running NVIDIA, right?
Got it. And their glass is always half filled.
Yeah.
There's nothing. That's why I like to want to
Yeah.
know what they're doing. I want them to wow us with what they're looking at. What's going to make a difference? As soon as we start bringing those things back, somebody got to fix. Those are the.
Yeah. Right. So talking about inflation, I was starting to talk about that with the jobs reports, because the Federal Reserve does look at the jobs reports, and that's part of their one segment of how they calculate where they're going with the Fed rates. But I seems as though inflation's going to be sticky, and it's going to continue to be with us for some time. So if it's still sticky, we have the 10-year Treasury continuing to inch up. And then Trump comes in, new executive orders, cutting regulation, um, bringing more jobs back to America. The economy is probably going to improve and get hotter. What is that going to do to inflation in the short term?
Oh, well, I guess it would depend. Well, it would depend more probably on if it's getting hotter. Where is it getting hot? I mean, you
Mhm.
mentioned if we're starting to put on more and more government employees, then the answer is problem.
Yeah.
If it's the innovation and the tech part of the healthcare area, then you know what? That's terrific.
Yeah.
If it's in infrastructure, you know, we have the best access to capital anywhere on the planet. And at some point in time, government is going to have to start looking at the private sector and their ability to raise capital for certain areas, because that's what's going to go make it, and that will push down the inflation issue.
But isn't our 36 trillion and growing debt crowding out the
It,
private companies and
it
private
is
citizens?
the biggest growth sector of the economy right now. Private equity.
Right. Right. They're into
And
everything.
private equity
Yep.
do their own monies.
Like the BlackRock.
And that's
Fund.
not
Well,
only
there's a
that.
lot of them.
Yeah,
there's
I'm just
of all
giving
sizes.
examples.
Yeah.
I'm
there,
just,
you know,
so people
some of
know
the
what we're
hedge
talking about.
funds,
Yeah.
but anything, anybody who, and again, it'd be you. Some hedge fund might call and say, for 25,000, look at the private sector. That that's bringing capital from us in the private sector. They have access to the problem growing that you just talked about. So
Mm.
was did the chip acts actually do?
Yeah.
But so we spend money. There's trillions, billions, or whatever it is, dollars that they haven't spent yet. Wipe it off the books. Don't do it anymore.
Yeah, but that grow, and there's many reasons, but I mean, I think people would see an incredible practical tangible change in everything if we cut $2 trillion from this.
If we could cut
Right.
2 trillion.
I think the first 2 trillion is pretty easy.
Okay.
I think after that it gets a little more
I
difficult.
thought the trillion might be easy, but I thought the 2 trillion.
Not billion,
You mean
trillion.
out of the federal budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the first trillion's pretty easy. I think the second trillion can be done after that.
Really start fighting.
Yeah, but because it's just so out of control, and there's so much money, hundreds of billions, God knows how many in total, that have been approved but haven't even been spent. COVID money. Biden administration's throwing COVID money out the door as fast as they can right now.
Ridiculous.
I mean, so, but my point is that this ever growing national debt, as the country goes into debt and needs to
This is the worst it's
to
been since
cover that
Yeah,
debt.
it's the worst it's been since World War
But
II.
what's that doing to interest rates, the
interest rate-
market in general?
interest rates will stay high, as we talked about,
Right.
because of that.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is the ever growing side of private equity will draw a lot away. Will draw a lot of that away because there will be a return on their equities they're not getting from government. Can never get.
So explain. I'm not sure I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Private equity can be used
Mm-hmm.
now. Pharma, rehabilitation, private equity sectors own, facilitate,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually sell off as a public sector help. Should we in the state be sharing private sector?
Well,
Because
how would
the-
that work? How would you have
How does
private?
it work?
How would you have private sector?
How does
pay
it work
for-
in Germany? Come in and you bid. Say this X. Now again, don't care of it. is a whole
And it's done privately.
an all
Okay,
private.
so that's what you mean by private
Okay,
equity from
alright.
that standpoint.
And
Okay.
so when all those things, and you know that there's a lot at stake because this livelihood, but all that's taken. Why?
So you would privatize your road?
Why? Why?
Interesting.
Why? If you look at the capital spend,
Oh, I agree with you. That's
it's asinine,
crazy.
and well, it's homo dating trust fund put his father's name on a bridge. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if that we know what the revenues are, and the private sector knows that they can take care of those things. The private sector knows that they're going to get that year in, year out, and they know that have to stay better. They know that road is going to have to be okay for the truckers, private sector to roll on. Those are the kind of areas that can dramatically change.
And people don't realize that, sometimes there'll be a project and I'll have somebody say, "Well, I'm in the construction business. I could do it a lot cheaper than that." And I tell them, "Yeah, probably could." You know why? Because the company that just won that bid, they have to pay something called the prevailing wage.
Which deal with
So when a public entity like a town, a county, state, whatever in New York State, the there's a necessity. The law is to pay a prevailing wage, so it could be 35% more cost for us to do a project as a town than if a private sector construction company just did it on their own. So yeah, you will see that. So that's one way to save based on what the example that you're giving us.
And
Frank.
that could dramatically
Yeah,
cost them.
yeah.
And by the way, it's accountable because once it gets into the hands of the business, if they're not they're not bonded, if they don't all the protections, probably jail. And
Well, the worst case scenario is the company goes out of business. The state or federal government takes the road back and then rebids it,
yeah,
you
and
just
then you
prevent,
don't lose anything.
or you just prevent government from spending.
But getting back to the actual mechanics, because I think this is important for people to understand, because I think a lot of people say, they see the headlines, oh, the debt's going up, 35 trillion, 36, and it's going to be 37 soon. And it really doesn't affect it.
well,
I
it does
haven't
affect,
seen it, but
it does affect. We talked
yes,
about this. What happens with the 10-year Treasury? It will affect
right.
them.
But
If we,
why is that? How can you talk to the mechanics as to why that is? It's
Why
because
does national debt
it's
hurt us?
because of the debt the government's taking out crowds out
well, as the interest rates
and
go
takes up
up,
so much of it.
the
Supply and demand, right?
well, as the interest rate goes up, the cost of
Yes.
remember we were paying
Right.
basically paying
Right.
the that's dramatic. You have cost aid borrow more.
And they're selling treasuries to cover that debt. So the more treasuries they sell, likely,
The more cost it is.
right.
The money is ability.
Yeah, but it's also the point I'm trying to get to. It's also jacking up all our interest rate, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
line.
and that's the point I'm getting to. They crowd out the market overall because they're sucking so much of that money that's available into the federal government just to cover the debt that they're creating.
The bigger
that-
chunk of the federal government budget pay
Like,
for the debt.
again.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Whoop.
I just wanted to make the point that, I think a lot of people think, well, the debt's big, it's probably a problem, but it doesn't really affect me. But it is. It's affecting you every single
Well,
day.
what affects the individual, I think, a little bit more than just going out and borrowing is the fact when we've never had interest rates, or we never had debt any higher than we've had today on credit cards. People just don't have the
Yeah.
discipline to buy. If it's all right to use a card because you want your point, but if you can't pay it off at the end of the month, you can't afford it.
That
So
might be the only way they have to pay for some of these
Yeah.
things too. Unfortunately. With some
yeah,
folks.
but look at the leisure aspect. Look at the travel
Oh yeah.
people
Yeah.
are spending. There's no reason if you
Right.
can't pay that off. If you're going to go on a vacation and you can't pay it off, you can't afford it.
Right.
So now, when all of a sudden the credit card interest rates jump from 4 or 5% to 10, 12, 15%,
Yeah.
you did that to yourself. So let's not always go blame. Let's look at our own
Oh
internal
yeah.
operating costs
No,
here. And
absolutely.
so that is a
Yeah,
big
when
But
you're
I tell
used to
you,
paying, 4, 5, and 6, just a span of 3 years, it goes to 30. I mean, that's not also a
Yes, it is,
combination.
but it's a problem because at some point, government's looking at this saying, can't let this happen to these businesses. These businesses, all they're trying to do is like, we're going to go out and spend, spend, spend. Well, I can't tell you how many times how many people I talk to and say, "How are you doing versus the budget you put together for yourself?" Well, how are you? How are you operating against your budget now? What's what? There is a lack of discipline in terms of what there is. It's terrible. So we're feeding one feeds the other, but the mere fact that we have to go out because individuals, both people, take care of giving them. Somebody has to pay for that, and it's going to be hardship down the line somewhere. You don't get this under.
well, I'll tell you what, I bought 18 pack of
I
eggs
was going to say the same
yesterday
thing.
at I love Price Chopper. I'm not I'm sure it's the same at Hannaford and everywhere else.
Should have
Uh
gone almost double.
Yeah.
$9.60
Yeah. So
for
to
but I
Phil's
think
point,
that has something to do with the population, animal population too. Yeah, I don't think that's just inflation, but boy, they've
The
really
prices
shot
going
up.
down too, compared to where they were 4 months ago.
yeah, but if you're used to
Not on
spending, let's
eggs.
say, $400 on food a month,
Yep.
and because of the inflationary price going, paying $1,000, and you make so much money, you're used to the difference. It's nothing that you did.
I
It's
I
it's
understand that, but in that also, fine, you process. I have. I've seen it with people $1,000 back from Disney. You did? You'd be
Yeah.
surprised how much more of that is in these numbers.
Yeah.
I know
We were
that. I'm guilty of that.
we were talking about the interest rates and things that affect people directly, and
They're hard choices.
yeah. And one thing that seen in the real estate market, especially now, is prices are up again, going back to supply and demand, and there's just a lack of inventory on the market. I don't see that changing until interest rates come down. And as we're just talking about, if you look at the 10-year Treasury, which mortgage rates are based on, just like many other things, car loans and everything else, we don't see that rate coming down substantially anytime soon. And I think until we have a lot of people with mortgages at 2, 3, 4%. Are they going to sell their house and buy a new one and get a mortgage at 6, 7, 8%? Probably not. And I think that's a big reason why inventory is so low, which is really stopped the flow that we're used to, where you have people selling, people buying, and it all kind of works together. But I think our interest rate environment, we were at 0% for how long, and now they've shot up. And the other problem is the prime rate. Well, the prime rate has gone up quite a bit, and that's what a lot of business loans might have a business commercial loan. I've got a commercial loan based on prime plus 0 or prime plus 1 or whatever it might be. So if that prime rate is high, your borrowing costs are high to invest in your business, which is a lot of times going to retard people investing in their business.
Bank is lending you at prime plus.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to do that because profit building the other way. But there are other ways. Your point about housing, home builders, dramatically now. Well, they would build houses.
Mm.
So building houses today need to build today better use. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
maybe they build them because responsibility what they have to do causes them to have to build. I don't know. As you Florida now, no inventory there, and there won't be any inventory. And insurance, they
Mm-hmm.
will give you a mortgage and insurance. Anything south of the coast now, they'll go. So inland prices are now Nasdaq, basket in North Carolina, Nashville area.
Yeah.
It had
Is
a
there
100-year
inland and
Well, yeah, but everything was perfect until it wasn't. So
yeah.
there's more pressure now, I think, up with practical. Back to what I cost to private. Maybe it's responsibility of this to go into these areas of have been
Yeah, I'd love
known,
to
I
see
guess.
that. Yeah. Love
Yeah.
to see.
I
Believe me,
I
I,
agree
I
with you.
want the cities to be successful.
Yeah,
I,
but you're talking about uh, basic regulations.
I
What
mean,
20 years ago, 10 years ago, a breaker for fucking today because it's 50. They have 150 breakers. That's a huge. Every outlet used to be a direct spark fault. That's dollars and so a lot of the codes also changed
That's
more money.
yeah, well, that's part of the regulation.
That's all insurance
yeah,
driven.
that was what you were talking
Yeah.
about before. We do some of these.
Yeah.
I think there's so many factors that affect pricing.
Yeah.
You know, it all has to be looked.
Stuff again, it's all stuff people don't see.
Yeah.
All stuff. It's done
It sounds great, but
it's done
it's
administratively. Some blue ribbon committee somewhere, and it's people appointed to it. All have the same goal in mind, which is to add more regulation, and which all leads to price increases. And some of it makes sense. Some of it certainly doesn't to
I
the
think
average person.
I don't. I guess it's regulation that comes in out there. Translates to Great Plains.
Right.
yeah,
So
Right.
has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
we're failing our students.
Right.
They're undereducated, can't read. This is what's growing.
Yeah.
How that.
Sure
So
it is.
again, overemphasize. Have to, common sense has got
School choice.
Like the private sector.
Yeah, school choice. Big way to fix that problem. Yeah, we could go on that subject for a long time, but I think with the inauguration coming up, new Trump policies, executive orders,
Village.
let's look forward to
We got 2 years.
Deregulation.
He's got 2
Oh, he's
years.
got a lot to do in 2 years. That's right.
I guess the
Deregulation,
next election.
increase in mergers and acquisitions. I think we'll see some increases in IPOs. We talked about IPOs the last show,
Yep.
initial public offerings, which is when kind of the process, of course, a stock is available mass basis to purchase or sell.
The interesting part about that M&A and IPOs is you're seeing more and more companies are finding their niches, not going public,
Mm,
and becoming worth billions of dollars, tens of billions, because they don't have to go through
right.
garbage that a public company does.
Right.
So,
That's
to
right.
your point, it's going to be the capital markets, rest of the world, just
But the way the Biden administration has blocked so many
Ugh.
deals, that it's stopped so many mergers and acquisitions, which is an important part of our economy. Uh, Companies won't go public because they don't want to deal with what they have to deal with administratively through the federal government. So these appointments that are coming up, I think, are just going to do a complete 180 that the federal government has as far as an outlook on the economy and mergers, and just make it a more favorable environment for people to take risk. And when people take risk, it creates more economic activity. We
the incoming
would,
administration has private publics.
yeah,
Yes. That's
oh
what
yeah,
you need.
yeah. There's no doubt, but especially in key positions, key
I-
policy making positions.
I do have a question. Really curious what you think. What was your thought? Affecting it.
I personally think U.S. Steel had an opportunity. Nippon stepped in. If they wanted to do something that Cleveland Cliff wanted to take them away.
Do you think it was right that they rejected it?
I think it was wrong involved. Everything played out the way it's playing out. Cleveland Cliffs had the better opportunity to take over the company, keep it in it.
Right.
I thought, I missed a step. I thought they got involved with Nippon.
Yeah, because they offered the opportunity. Fun as put it headquartered.
So you'd be opposed to?
It still produces. I don't know. I'm not opposed. I just did it. With you want to keep it, then opportunity company and make it a bigger, strong. I think Cleveland Cliffs is still an opportunity. If
They were a company that had huge problems not long
and they
ago.
turn themselves around.
Yeah, yeah.
That's, again, the ability of that private equity to come in there and say,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah, they went bankrupt, didn't they? Yeah,
years ago.
yeah. They filed Chapter 7. Yeah, I remember that years ago. But they've made a strong comeback. So it just shows you're never out of the game. So we talked a lot about a lot of burgeoning areas of the economy and the stock market. One area that is tried and true and fairly solid is banking. We saw strong earnings. Banks that have reported. I haven't heard of any reported bad earnings. There might be some. But generally, bank stocks have been up big the last 2 days. So that's good to see because they pay good dividends typically. A lot of banks pay nice dividends. A dividend is something where you're in essence getting paid for holding the stock. So every quarter, usually most of the time, not in 100% of cases, but you receive a dividend based on the number of stocks that you own, and it's the number of stocks you own by the dividend rate, and that's the amount of money you would receive every 3 months. And I think the best way to do that, the best way to handle that money is just have it go back automatically back into buying more
Reinvest.
stock. So that way
Build
You know,
capital.
it's not
Yeah.
coming into your bank account and getting lost. Goes right back into buying the stock. And that's easy. If you have a brokerage account, you can set that up very easily, a couple of clicks, and just have that dividend automatically buy more stock every time that dividend comes in. Then after a couple of years of holding one of these bank stocks, hopefully the price has gone up, and you'll notice maybe you bought 100 shares. Well, maybe after a couple of years, you have, I don't know, 120 shares. So if the stock goes up and you bought more shares through the dividend, you've got a nice return.
Even if not buying the company, you can look at an exchange traded fund in each
Yeah.
banking sector.
Yep.
And 2 or 3 different types that have big name companies. Some of those pay monthly. So
Yeah, and we talked about that in the last show. ETFs, exchange traded they have baskets of stocks. So some people aren't comfortable buying one stock. You know, them one stock here, one stock there individually. If you want to buy a basket of bank stocks, a basket of technology stocks, million different options. That is a little more diversified. They might all be in the same economic sector, but you're spreading your risk because you're buying a basket of stocks. That's what you're referring to?
yep. And
Yeah.
if they pay the dividends, pass through painless capital.
If you want to see some options, you can just go on DuckDuckGo and put in bank ETFs, and some will come up, and then you can look those up, look at the pricing. It'll also show you, once you go into the stock symbol, it'll show you what banks are included in that ETF or what technology stocks are in that ETF. And that's a nice way to get started with investing as well.
Especially if you're young.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't afford. Easier to spend paying some time.
Yeah. And that's what I started. I mean, I started with oil stocks and bank stocks. Just started small many, many moons ago and just added to them
Many.
over time. Reinvested the
I had to give
dividends.
that.
So it's just a good way to get started. Start small. You let the dividends do some work for you. And generally, those industries are less volatile, especially compared to some of these other
Defensive
ones.
in nature.
I mean, there's some of these other ones we were talking about today that dropped 50% in one day. You know, those are very volatile. These are, they go up and down, but they're not as volatile typically. And it's a nice way to ease your way in, let the dividends work for you, and get you started so you can build up that nest egg. And then when you get more money in the account, well, you want to take a little.
Our buddy, Mr. Wonderful, list of 50 stocks that pay every month.
Got a couple of
Yeah.
also. He actually put them in.
Yeah. So to your
AI.
point, you can build every single month. There's followed his.
You can also there's I think it's an app. I've never looked at it, but I heard there was an app or something.
That
or
follows
program.
Nancy Pelosi.
They can follow Nancy Pelosi's stock pick. She does very well.
She does very well. I wonder why she does so well.
Very impressed with her stock performance. Jack, thank you. Thank you for being here. We took up a lot of your time today. I really appreciate it.
quick.
I told Jay an hour. Well, I guess it was a little more than that, but
It went quick though.
It always does.
Always good.
I figure we're here 45 minutes, and I look down on my phone, and it's an hour plus. I'm like, wow, where did that go? So, but thank you, Jack. Thank you for being here. We'll have you back again because, as I said in the beginning, finances and stock market news and everything changes so quickly. Hopefully, some of the information that you learned today will be useful to you as you make your daily decisions with your finances, with your investing plans, and let's face it, every day we're making decisions about our finances. So knowing where to find information and trends and being as informed as possible is extremely important. So thank you, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you being here.
Conned me into coming on today.
We're hitting it hard in 2025. Yeah, I'm gonna Remember, subscribe. TGM
Yes.
Studios, Phil Barrett Show. Our subscribers are growing. We want to keep getting it up there. So help us out so you won't miss a show. Thank you so much. God bless. Have a great week.